Hello there, welcome to the Football Block. My name is Brandon. Today we have another episode of News Bits, and I'm going to look back on this whole weekend in football in that Europe's top 5 leagues. I'm going to try and make this, a relatively common thing at the end of every weekend, just looking back at the big events that have happened over the weekend. This weekend there was a few, so I thought it would have been cool to just look back and recap over what happened so far. And first off, we're going to start off in the Premier League in England on Saturday, September 23rd. There was some big results here in terms of the bigger teams playing. At the very least, we had Manchester City come away with a pretty convincing 2-0 win over Nottingham Forest, just further proving that they are the best team in the world by far. Manchester United was able to bounce back after a series of unfortunate and disappointing results over the past few weeks with a 1-0 win over Burnley. Not the most convincing win, but still a win is a win, which is very, very necessary. The next day, September 24th, the Sunday, we had some more important games here. We had the London derby, the North London derby between Arsenal and Tottenham, which overall was actually a very, very interesting game. It ended up 2-2, a draw, 2-2 draw. Arsenal, I think, dominated the first half. I thought Arsenal played extremely well. Saka looked very good. I thought Gabriel Jesus, who's his first star of the Premier League, I thought he did really well. But Tottenham got into the game. They got back into the game at the end of the first half, and then the very beginning of the second half, they were able to draw level. Arsenal was able to regain the lead in the second half, but then Tottenham, completely drew level again with a very, very quick counterattack. And after that point, it was pretty even. I don't think either team really was able to grab control over the match, but considering that Arsenal was the home team, considering that Arsenal just on paper have a much better squad, you would expect that they'd be the favorites to win. You'd expect that they would be the ones to grab all 3 points. But Tottenham actually looked to be a decent team this year round by evidence of these past few games so far here. Who knows where they'll end up on the league table, but I think a top 4 finish is very, very possible, actually. And then as for Arsenal, I think this just goes to show that as good as a team they are, they can't compete with Manchester City. If you look at the league table right now, Manchester City is top. Their perfect record, 6 wins out of 6, 18 points. Liverpool is in second. We'll get onto them in a moment. Arsenal's down in 5th. Arsenal is actually below Tottenham, who is in 4th. But again, they're level on points. Still early days, of course, but it'll be interesting to see how this ends up later on as we go farther and farther throughout the season. I mentioned Liverpool before. They were able to come away with a 3-1 win over West Ham. They had some early results in the beginning of the season, which, you could see a little bit of inconsistency there, but I think Liverpool is slowly coming back to the quality team, the top quality team that they have been under Klopp in years past. And then Chelsea lost 1-0 to Aston Villa. Chelsea's season continues to spiral out of control. Another very disappointing performance from them. Aston Villa is a quality team. They're a good team, but still, with the amount of money that Chelsea have been spending, the amount of quality that they have within their team, they should be winning this game. At the very least, they shouldn't be losing this game. But anyway, let's move on to La Liga in Spain. We had some big matchups as well. On Saturday, we had Barcelona going up against Celta Vigo. Huge matchup here when you consider the fact that obviously Barcelona, reigning champions, Celta Vigo, not the best team in Spain at the moment. Historically, they've had some good squads, they've had some good players, but for whatever reason, whenever Celta Vigo play Barcelona, they turn into prime Real Madrid. This game is a perfect example of that, where they actually raced to a 2-0 lead over Barcelona. I think, Barcelona's coming off some really, really great results. That 5-0 win over Real Betis last week, as well as their 5-0 win over Royal Antwerp in the Champions League midweek. So, they're riding high on that. João Felix, João Cancelo, really meshing well with the rest of the team. But they just looked a little lethargic. They looked a little tired at the beginning of this game. Celta Vigo came out swinging. I think Barcelona maybe was a little shocked. And of course, like I said before, Celta Vigo just surprisingly always show up when they're playing against Barcelona. But I think this match was very, very important to show that Barcelona was able to come back and win 3-2. And in fact, all three of their goals were scored with, less than 20 minutes left in the game. 2 goals from Lewandowski, and then a very, very nice finish from João Cancelo, of all people, to win it 3-2 at the end right there. And I think this is really important for this Barcelona team. It shows that they have a good mentality. I think Xavi is learning more as a manager. He's still a very new manager, but I think he's just, gaining more valuable experience here. Still, there is some question to be asked of Barcelona's defense. I think, for example, Jules Koundé did not have that very good of a game. Neither did Christensen. These are 2 guys that I thought had a very good season last year, but defensively, Barcelona was very strong last year. I think there is some areas for improvement, but overall, this team looks to be heading in the right direction. We also saw an interesting game here. Girona beat Mallorca by 5-3. An absolutely crazy goal fest there. Always love to see that. Now moving on to Sunday, there was some other goal fest we had here. For example, Real Sociedad, rising team, a rising power in Spain. They were able to beat Getafe by 4-3. Another just absolute shootout right there. Surprisingly, Getafe, a team that is known for just being super defensive, they were, again, surprisingly able to score 3 goals on Real Sociedad. But the most important game of the round, and probably the most important game in all of Europe this Sunday, or at least this weekend in my opinion, was we had the Madrid derby. We had Atletico hosting Real Madrid. Real Madrid coming into this game with a perfect record this season. And Jude Bellingham proving to be one of the best midfielders in the world. But I think the fact that they had played not necessarily the best competition is kind of papering over a lot of the cracks. There are some serious problems with this Madrid team versus Atletico Madrid, who have been very up and down. They've had some wonderful performances. For example, they were able to beat Rayo Vallecano 7-0. But also in their last game, they lost to Valencia, a very, very poor Valencia team, 3-0, and they were only able to draw against Lazio midweek in the Champions League, they getting denied by a 94th minute header from Provedel, Lazio's goalkeeper. Very interesting goal there. But this match here, Atletico, at least in the first half and parts of the second half, and especially in the very, very beginning of this match, I want to say like the first 20 minutes, Atletico looked amazing. It was very interesting performance there. They, going forward, were very, very proactive, very creative. It's not often you see Diego Simeone's side play this well going forward. Lino, who's playing left wing back for Atletico Madrid, the new signing there, had a wonderful game. He had a beautiful assist for Morata's opening goal, and then Antoine Griezmann scored another headed goal not too long after that. He pulled out the hotline bling celebration that we haven't seen since like 2017. Atleti was dominating the game, but Real Madrid was able to grab one back. Toni Kroos, really good shot. He flicked it up and put it into the lower bottom corner. When Toni Kroos scores a goal, it's going to be a really nice goal like that. Real Madrid looked like they actually were going to tie the game 2-2. Kind of a mix-up at the back and an fortunate bounce for Real Madrid at least. Camavinga was able to tap it in, but Rudiger was judged to be offside, blocking Oblak's vision there. Heading into halftime, it was 2-1 to Atletico, and it looked like Real Madrid had kind of turned the game around in their favor. At least it looked like maybe a comeback was coming. Of course, you can never count on Real Madrid, but immediately when the second half started, Morata scored yet another header, and again, with all 3 of the goals, very poor defending from Real Madrid, surprisingly so, but very poor defending. Obviously, Courtois has been injured. He's out. He's going to be out for most of the season, as is Eder Militao. But still, you're looking at a very talented lineup. Kepa, I think, is still a pretty good goalkeeper. Rudiger, Alaba, very good defenders. Now, of course, you look at a guy like Fran Garcia. He had a terrible game, but he's a young guy. You can't expect much of him. But beyond him, you're looking at a very experienced back line, and it is very surprising how poor they played. Overall, as well, it was a very strange lineup from Ancelotti, who had Jude Bellingham kind of playing as a second striker. And don't get me wrong, Jude Bellingham has been Real Madrid's best player by far, one of the best players in the world. He's been scoring a lot of goals, but he is not a striker. You can't have him playing up on the field, that far up on the field like that. And this just goes to show that Real Madrid lack a striker. Of course, Benzema leaving in the summer, and they were supposed to sign Mbappe. That kind of fell through. It looks like they're probably going to get him next summer, but still, Joselu is a good, reliable striker. He's a good La Liga striker. He's going to grab you, of course, maybe like 10, 15 goals a season, but he's not going to grab you 25 to 30 goals like Benzema. And I'm really surprised that Real Madrid did not go for a short replacement or just a one-year contract from a player in preparation for Mbappe coming. And I think that is going to hurt them this season, especially in La Liga. But anyway, you look at the table here. Barcelona's top of the table. They're actually tied with Girona, of all teams. But, of course, we're very early on. You would expect the table to look slightly different. Real Madrid is in third. Atletico is in fifth. Valencia is, I think, a team that's going to be a surprise team. Like I said, they have a very poor squad. This is one of the worst Valencia squads we've seen in recent times. But they surprisingly aren't playing all that bad, all things considered, with all the chaos going on behind the scenes. Let's move on to Serie A in Italy. And on Saturday, we had an interesting game between Sassuolo and Juventus. Sassuolo is a team that, of course, is always kind of hovering around the last few European spots. In the past, they've even been better than that. They still have some very talented players. For example, they have Berardi, who is one of the standout performers in this match here, as Sassuolo actually beat Juventus 4-2. Surprising result there, because I think Juventus has been in decent form throughout the season, but they got shocked here. Of course, it was away from home. Sometimes these games can be a little tough, but I think Sassuolo was just by far the better team. I think the one shining light for Juventus was Chiesa. Chiesa looks to be back in really good form. Both of the goals that Juventus scored were from Chiesa, the second of which actually being a pretty good strike from him. So that is the one saving grace there. But elsewhere in Serie A, we saw AC Milan. They narrowly beat Hellas Verona 1-0. Lazio tied Monza 1-1. Another draw from Lazio. And we had Inter Milan come away with a hard-fought 1-0 win over Empoli, which is surprising considering Empoli has been conceding tons and tons of goals recently. And then we had Torino tie Roma 1-1. Roma unable to grab the win here, but Lukaku did score another goal for Roma, the new signing there. And then, surprisingly, Bologna was able to grab a draw with Napoli, who looked to be kind of, I don't want to say falling apart, but they're not necessarily in the best form at the moment, which is, in hindsight, kind of expected with just how great of a season they played last year and just how tough of a obstacle that was to win their first league title in 30 years. But as for the league table, we have the two Milan clubs as 1 and 2. Inter Milan at first, AC Milan in second, 3 points behind them there. But I think that there is a huge gap between Inter Milan and AC Milan, as we saw 2 weeks ago in the Milan derby. But I think we also see a huge gap between Inter Milan and the rest of Serie A. I think they're looking to be one of the best teams in Italy. Yes, they didn't have the best result midweek in the Champions League, but I think Inter Milan looks seriously good this year. At this moment, it looks like they will be the ones to end up winning the Scudetto for 2023-2024. But anyway, let's move on to the Bundesliga in Germany. And in the Bundesliga, we saw some interesting games here. Borussia Dortmund went up against Wolfsburg. Historically, a big game there. Borussia Dortmund, who has not been having that good of a season, was able to grab a win, though. They were able to win 1-0, courtesy of a goal from Marco Reus, the veteran. On the flip side, though, Bayern Munich beat Bochum 7-0. Absolutely smashing result there, coming off the highs of their very prolific goal-scoring game against Manchester United in the Champions League midweek. Harry Kane was able to score a hat-trick for Bayern Munich, his first hat-trick for the Bavarian club. We also saw a big matchup between Borussia Mönchengladbach and RB Leipzig. RB Leipzig was able to grab a 1-0 win, a very close win there. They were able to win courtesy of a goal from Timo Werner, who looks to be, back to something close to himself back there in Leipzig. And then on the next day, we had a draw, a very, disappointing draw between, a 0-0 draw between Eintracht Frankfurt and Freiburg. But Bayer Leverkusen were able to beat Heidenheim, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, 4-1. And if you look at the league table, Bayern Munich, top of the table, no surprise there, of course. But at least on points, they are tied with Bayer Leverkusen, who, under this new manager, Xabi Alonso, his first managerial job here in senior professional management, they look to be really, really good. Yeah, they could, of course, it's early on. Xabi Alonso himself is a young manager, and this team is, for the most part, kind of a young team. But going forward, a year or two from now, they could be a serious team in Germany. Stuttgart is still in third after their great start to the season. Leipzig's in fourth. Borussia Dortmund is down in sixth place, surprisingly. Now let's move on to the last league we're going to look at. We have Ligue 1 in France. And this weekend, we saw Lyon lose to Brest. And Lyon is having an absolutely terrible season. One of the worst seasons they've had in recent memory. Remember, this is a team that not too long ago was making it to the semifinals of the Champions League. And then a little earlier than that, they were winning multiple Ligue 1 titles in a row. And yet, we're 6 games into the season. They have 0 wins, 4 losses. Another loss here against Brest. They look terrible. Later on that same day, though, we were treated to another goal fest. Nantes beat Lorient 5-3. Very, very exciting game there. Both teams brought their shooting boots. But moving on to the next day, we had Sunday. The huge match, the headline match, was Le Classique. We had PSG going up against Marseille. Marseille coming off a very, very fun game, fun result, 3-3 against Ajax in the Europa League. But they could not compete against PSG here, losing 4-0. Hakimi yet again scored, and then Kolo Muani came off his great season last year with Eintracht Frankfurt getting signed here by PSG. He opened his accounts in this match, scoring as well. And then, interestingly enough, though, we did see an injury from Mbappe. It remains to be seen how long he's going to be out for, but he was subbed off. Gonzalo Ramos, another new signing, was subbed on. He scored pretty recently after coming off the bench, and then he was able to add a double after an assist from Kolo Muani. Very convincing performance from PSG. Now, of course, we can't get too overhyped. PSG always start off the season very well, and then, while they may end up winning Liga, it usually kind of peters out in the Champions League. But still, you have to give credit where credit is due. This was a very good performance from PSG, and a pretty poor performance from Marseille. I think they were just blown away. Maybe also the fatigue coming in from that very, very arduous game against Ajax. Interestingly enough, another team that is struggling at the moment that shouldn't really be struggling. But if you look at the league table in France, Brest is actually top of the table. They are top there. Nice is second, and PSG is in third, mostly because of their loss to Nice 2 weeks ago. But you would have to expect for the results to look more familiar as the season goes on and as PSG just continues to rack up the wins. So anyway, that has been the weekend roundup in Europe's top 5 leagues. There were some pretty fun games overall, some huge, heavy score lines as well. I wasn't able to talk about everything here. We only have a limited time, of course, and there was a bunch of games going on. If there was something big I missed, please let me know in the comments below. And if you have any opinions on anything that I've talked about, please let me know them in the comments as well. But anyway, guys, this has been the Football Block. Hope you guys have a nice rest of your night.